What's up, everybody? Welcome to the second episode of the ign-arena-podcast. I'm Leah B. Jackson. This is James Faulkner. This is Brian Albert.
Hello.
This is Mitch Dyer.
Howdy.
And IGN Arena is our MOBA and competitive gaming podcast, if you're not quite familiar with it yet. If you want to know more about MOBAs in general, you can check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/IGN-arena. And if you want to subscribe or write into us, you can do that too at arenapodcast@ign.com. You can also subscribe on iTunes.
We're everywhere.
Or
Taking
everywhere.
over all places.
Yes, indeed. So one of our readers from last week wrote us in, Yair, and he was asking about getting into MOBAs.
Yep.
There's so many coming out right now that it's sort of like,
Yep.
how do I get into it? What should I do? So Yair writes in and says, I've been wanting to get into MOBAs, but I played a couple matches of Dota 2 and got destroyed. Any tips?
So after 200 hours of Dota 2, this is still my experience.
You're still getting destroyed?
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Yeah. As we're saying before the podcast, number one tip. What is it?
Don't die.
Don't
die.
feed.
Don't feed.
Don't feed, don't die.
Yeah.
If you don't see someone, be scared because they're coming for
They're
you.
going to find you. That's
Yeah,
the most
it's-
terrifying thing.
It's really easy. Like if you play a lot of other kinds of games, your characters are generally powerful.
Yeah.
You're just strong characters in games. But
Right.
in Dota, you're not really.
Or in
At
any
least-
MOBA, really.
Yeah, it's
I mean,
true.
and in
When-
most other games too, like when you die, it's almost inconsequential because one, you respawn immediately. Two, it actually doesn't benefit the other team that much except for the score. Whereas in Dota, if you die, and this is true of every MOBA, but when you die, you're giving the other team an enormous amount of gold, a bunch of experience points that helps them level up, and they improve their skills and items more rapidly because of you.
And there's also like less pressure on other lanes. It's like basically if you're gone from the map, there is a power balance that has been tipped.
It's huge too.
Yeah.
Like one death really matters, even if it's early in the game. That first blood that happens at like 60 seconds is still significant because that's time you are not earning XP and that they are.
Right. It's so the beginning of most MOBAs, you're sort of in a lane and you're trying to get enough experience and gold to go around and make bigger stuff happen.
Yeah.
But during that point, you might feel like you're not doing anything if you're not attacking the enemy or you're not running around or whatever. And that's okay a lot of times.
Yeah.
It's
Don't-
okay to stay in your lane and farm and sort of get your bearings and help, your teammates out.
Yeah.
And
Some
do all that
characters
type of stuff.
will leave their lanes early and gank, but like that's not a thing to worry about right now if you're just starting.
Yeah, I mean that's like at that point when you're desperate, like I want to do something, I want to help people.
Yeah.
At that point, that plays into Leah's number one tip, which is just like keep a constant eye on your minimap.
Yeah, so my number one tip for new players is to always be aware of your minimap and to definitely check it out a lot more than you think that you should, because that's something that I find a lot of new players don't do. They're just like, it's a map, I don't care, I don't need to be looking at it. But it's like, no, I want to shake you because you have to look at your minimap. It shows where your teammates are and where your opponents are if they're on the map. And if all of a sudden, one of those blips from the enemy team isn't on the map anymore, it's like, oh crap, where is that guy? Do I need to be more careful? Like, what should I be focusing on? And it really helps to communicate that to your team as well if the person in your lane is now missing. So it's important to sort of have, to communicate and to use your minimap a lot.
I have a super short story about that. So
Regale me.
In Dota, there's this character called Phantom Assassin, and part of her passive is that she won't show up on your minimap.
Really?
I didn't know that.
I
If
didn't
she
either.
has
That's
that
terrifying.
blur, the blur passive
my
going on.
God.
Yeah. So most characters you can see, but then I didn't see her on there one time, and I was like, okay, no. And she came up and just
Does she
exploded
show up?
me.
And this is getting like way into the weeds, but like if Bloodseeker is on your team and she's below 50 and has that active, does she show up?
I believe you can still see her
Okay.
with Thirst active. But anyway, yeah, we're diving deep right
Okay.
there.
Yeah. Let's get way into the semantics of it. All right. No. Sorry. We'll keep it real basic. My number one tip is to do what I still get into this habit. I actually had to turn it off in the options because it is such a problem for me. But like, don't auto attack.
Yes.
If you right click on something, your character will just beat the snot out of it, and when it dies, it'll auto attack the next thing, which is really bad. Like you think that's good because you're helping, you're killing stuff, you're getting money, you're getting XP. It's bad. Don't do that.
Yeah,
You're just pushing up, and then you're putting yourself in a position is also a very important thing, which we can talk about. But like you're putting yourself in a bad position by forcing yourself up the lane.
Yep.
Yeah, so if you're basically like if you're auto-attacking creeps in a lane or the minions that are coming down the lane, then your team is pushing towards the other team's tower probably or maybe a little bit earlier than you might want to do that because towers are really, really strong early game. And so you don't always want to do that. You want to kind of keep a balance and be on your side of the map where you can defend a little bit easier as well.
Sure. The closer you are to your tower, the less likely they're going to come out and try to kill you.
Yeah,
you can just run back if you
I am like profoundly uncomfortable being on that bridge in top lane. If I'm pushing out, it's like this is a bad spot to be, right? Because somebody can come out of the river, they can come out of the forest. Like there's so many places for you to get jumped, and that makes me so uneasy.
Yeah. So situational awareness is just huge.
Kind of going back to like the vision thing, wards.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, wards save lives.
Wards are, I think, probably the most important item for a team. Stats items and damage items are great,
but in terms of like moment to moment, what is happening? There's nothing more important. Than
so if you have extra gold, whether it be in Dota or League, buy wards. They're not that expensive.
Yeah, and a great thing about wards is that they're really cheap. In any MOBA that you play, they are so cheap. So it's like if you are a new player and you can't possibly imagine farming up thousands and thousands of gold worth of items, in order to deck your character out, you can always buy wards because your team will love you. No matter what, your team will just be like, yeah, you bought wards. We can see what's going on now.
Yeah, and make sure you put them in good places, right? Like you want to put them in like the middle of a lane or on a corner where you can see the rune, something that gives you detection in areas where you are potentially in danger.
And so explain what wards are and then...
Sure, so they're
Regale us again!
Yeah. So it's basically just a little like structure. I guess it's called the structure in like the game's terms. But anyway, it just gives you vision of an area without you having creeps there or your characters there.
Totally.
And then there's certain wards that see invisible characters too, but they have smaller radius. They're super important. You want them for the middle of the game or for early middle game, and then like in the late game when you're like pushing their base, you'll have like offensive wards in their areas, so you can like corner them.
Right.
They're super useful. I would say I still have a long way to go in Dota, and I'm getting better. But like the moment when I started getting much better is when I started buying wards and teleport scrolls.
Yep.
And it feels like you're wasting your money sometimes because
like,
I'm not killing
you
someone.
Have limited amount of space in your inventory, and you're like, I could fit a demon edge in here, but I also need these wards.
Yep. Don't be afraid to buy that stuff. It's super useful. Your team will love you, as Leah said.
If you haven't read it, everybody go on Google right now and Google the Purge Guide. Welcome to Dota. You suck.
So helpful.
It's like 10,000 words, and it is the most helpful thing I've ever read about Dota. It breaks down exactly, like this is what this item is. This is how you stop feeding. This is the character you want to play when you first start out, and you maybe graduate here. This is what your role is. These are how these characters function. Learn how these items work. Don't buy these. Like there's so many helpful details
characters
in there.
to avoid.
Like one thing to definitely keep in mind if you're new to MOBAs, not just Dota 2, but any MOBA in general, is that you are going to suck when you first start. Like there are people who have been playing for years and years and years, and even if it's a new MOBA, they've been playing for months and months longer than you, and they are going to say you suck, and they're going to let you know, and you just... you have to get past it, and you have to keep trying and learning and, do some research about which game that you're playing, because they're all a little different. But these tips that we've said, sort of go with any MOBA that you're trying.
James, I love you deeply, and I'm telling you this is your friend. You suck at Dota.
I know. I'm kind of okay at League, though.
Yeah, you are way better at League.
Also, the mute button, I'm going to throw that out there.
The mute button's so nice.
So if people are being crappy and being jerks, just mute them.
Turn off the chat, hit your tilde, bring up the thing, and you can just hit the button to
Don't worry about them. They can deal with it.
Yeah, don't engage idiots who are being mean. Like, if they're telling you suck, acknowledge that, like, yeah, I probably do, and move on with your life.
And Mitch, get wrecked. I'm the best.
Get wrecked.
So thank you very much, Jair, for sending in that awesome user question. If you want to send in a question for the next podcast, our email is arena-podcast@ign.com, and we're also looking for feedback all the time. So thank you again. And if you want more tips on MOBAs, check out our YouTube channel at youtube.com/ign-arena. So moving on, we're going to be talking about fantasy and esports, because that's a thing that's really popping up a lot lately. There's the new Fantasy LCS League, there's the Fantasy Dota 2 League, and I really feel like this is an awesome trend that's happening, and it's made me more excited to watch tournaments that I might not have wanted to get as, far deep into. So what do you guys think about fantasy and esports?
I'm really excited, mainly because I sometimes get really busy like we all do and can't watch stuff, but because I have like certain players on my team, I'm more incentivized to actually go watch stuff, and even if I don't watch it, I still get to see how they're doing week to week.
Yeah. So I didn't even know this was a thing until James brought it up, and James got us. What even is the league that we're signed up in?
So we're
like,
in
what's the tournament?
Fantasy LCS, which is made by Riot for LCS EU NA, and it's basically anything else. You just draft the players. It has every single player in both leagues. And
in the same way that
it's very similar to like if you play fantasy football, if you're a football fan, or fantasy baseball or basketball, or any traditional sport seems to have a fantasy league nowadays. You can play on ESPN or Yahoo or whatever, and they're awesome. And these fantasy apps, that at least the fantasy LCS app, is exactly like the fantasy Yahoo league that I would play, to do fantasy football in. It's like you were saying, it's got all the players, it has their stats, you play against other people each week, you join a league, like it's really fun.
I was really impressed with the setup of it. We just went through yesterday and
it was super easy. It made sense. Like
20 minutes for 4 of us?
Yeah. And I mean, the setup they have is, it communicates to someone like me who, like, I'm just finally getting into like the actual competitive side of of MOBAs exists. This is really interesting. But I don't actually watch or care that much about League. But at the same time, they had a setup that kind of enticed me to go, ooh, like, who's this guy? Who's this team? Oh, this guy's really good in mid. I want to use him as my alt.
And they had like really good write-ups, like a 1-paragraph blurb about each like player and like how aggressive they are, and like what their role is, and like
stats, like how they compare to others within their role on other teams.
Yeah, and we also came in a week late, which is actually, I think, was a benefit for a lot of people, at least you guys, because if you hadn't watched it, you already had a week of stats to go off of for this split.
Yeah, I thought that was really smart. Like it shows their numbers and how many points each character or each player has gotten, week by week. So it was easy for you guys who don't know that much about League to sort of jump in. And I think that's great for anyone who is not, super familiar with all the players and is like, oh crap, I can't play this because I don't know who the players are. It's like, no, it's not. Pick, who's doing well and who you want to have on your team. It's no big deal.
Yeah, I have a couple players. I have I'm a cutie pie. Who I don't think is the best player in the league, but I just really like him. So he's actually kind of good. But I picked him because I was like, I want him on my team.
Well, Mitch got Kevin.
Kevin, you're my boy, Kevin. Don't let me down.
I can run through at least. So this week, it's Leah and I.
We're playing.
We're playing, and then Brian and Mitch are playing. And it starts on Thursday, which is tomorrow, the 29th.
Correct.
We're going down.
Yeah, but so I'm just gonna go off our rosters real quick. I have Soaz, Meteos, Bjergsen, Vasily, Afromu, and Link, and then you can also pick a team.
Yeah, so your team is like, who gets the first Baron kill, or who gets the most tower kills, or like each tower that your team gets, then you get a point, that type of thing. So it's broken down that way as well.
Yeah, because there aren't, in sports, there's like, you get goals and assists, or there's like RBIs and home runs, and all of that factors in. So those don't really exist in Dota. Like, you have kills, and then you have, okay, what else can we do to get points? What about towers, and what about
like at the scoreboard at the end? It's like, okay, kills, deaths, assists, like last hits, XP per minute. But
that's really interesting that they're adding all these like uniquely MOBA things to the fantasy draft.
Yeah, and that's how you get your points. So that's cool. So I want to tell people my team now.
Yeah. So you have Wicked, Amazing, Zhao Wei Zhao, Double Lift, Yellow Star, and High, and then you have LMQ as your team.
Indeed. My team is My Little Ponies.
Oh, yes.
For ourselves.
Oh.
My team is what?
We're going to decide them right now, but these people have great names. And
you mean like our MOBA names?
Our MOBA names. Yeah, we need MOBA names.
Leah's
got one.
Fat Cat.
Tony.
Tony's really good.
I'm trying to Tony.
Yeah.
I love that. I love that you're just picking like another normal first name. David.
I mean,
Kevin.
It's Tony the Tiger, but all caps, but it's just Tony.
Yeah.
When I'm playing Tiny.
Good.
And then, so your guys' team, so you guys don't know much. Team Dog, I think you're Team Dog.
I'm Team Dog, yeah.
Team Dog.
You have Balls, Dexter, Xpeke, Reckles, Lemon Nation, Wild Turtle, and you have Alliance as your team. Mitch has Kevin.
Yes.
Cyanide, Froggen, Sneaky, N-Rated, and Candy Panda, and Cloud9.
Candy Panda! That's a really awesome name.
And so, going in this week, I think Lee and I are pretty much tied. Or I have 3 more points, estimated points.
Yeah.
And then you actually have a crazy advantage over Mitch.
Sorry, Mitch.
You have I think a 15-point difference.
Oh my God!
But again, this is estimated, so they could totally
come
throw
on,
the game.
underdog victory.
Yeah.
Well, one of the things that I really love about fantasy sports, and what is the same thing in fantasy sports as in this, is that even if I don't like a certain team or a certain player, if I have that guy on my fantasy team, I love that guy and that team, and I want them to win so much. So it makes me watch and really care about games that I never would have cared about otherwise. And I think that's one of the greatest parts about the fantasy, the Fantasy LCS, Fantasy Dota, Fantasy in general, is it just makes me care more about the actual competition rather than just the teams who I'm personally a fan of.
And that's the big thing for me as somebody who doesn't really know a lot about this. Going into this now, like you just listed a bunch of players I've never heard of. By the end of this draft, I'm sure I will know these teams a lot better because I'm going to be invested in like checking that page. Okay, what did this guy do? Oh man, this guy was like annihilating guys this week. Like this guy's really good. That makes me want to know more about him.
Yeah, I think we're doing a Dota one as well. We're going to do it with a little bit wider of a pool outside of the podcast with a bunch of our friends, like Katie and so I think we'll talk about that as we do it. But right now, we'll check in. I think week by week, just maybe shortly.
See who wins.
Yeah.
See who wins and who doesn't win.
Bragging rights.
Why'd you look at me when you said who
doesn't win?
Oh no, because I don't know.
We'll just don't.
I didn't
we'll
mean
win
anything.
the Dota one. Yeah.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
I call Dendy.
I'll take RTZ.
Have fun with that draft.
Yeah, that would be a fun draft. So, I mean, it's definitely not too late to get involved, I guess, is what we're saying with the fantasy.
Yes,
but we
totally.
all seem to be on board and like it and
Yeah.
think it's a cool idea. Awesome. So, if you want to hear more about LCS, League of Legends, all that good stuff, make sure to check out IGN Arena on YouTube at youtube.com/IGN-arena. And now we are going to be moving on to the other sort of huge news that's been following us in the past few weeks is the Dota 2 International.
TI4.
TI4.
Yup.
The prize pool is disgusting at this point. Like,
Is it at 7 million yet? It's so close
I
this
don't
morning.
believe it broke.
I don't believe it's broken 7 million yet, but Valve has released a bunch of new stretch goals because they passed the 6 million mark last week. Like, it's been crazy. It's growing so fast. But what I want to ask you guys is sort of, do you think that this $6 million prize pool is helping esports or is hurting esports? And Brian, I want to kick it off to you first.
I don't think it's hurting at all. I mean, Dota doesn't cost anything, and if you pay for it, it's because you want to, right? And that's sort of like the same thing that's going on here. Like, you can just watch TI4. You can watch streams if you want.
Yeah, there's no like digital pass to
Right. I mean,
enable you to watch.
You can
just
like
do
buy
it.
the compendium for $10 if you want like all the extra stuff.
Sure.
But you can just watch it online. But yeah, people love this. They love these players. They're invested in this game, and they want to, they're kicking some money to it, and they're getting some cool stuff back. I don't see any problem with this.
How about you?
Outside of the Dota community, though, I think it's a little bit weird, at least for the fans. Like, a lot of the league players are like, well, Riot, why aren't you doing this? Like, we want to contribute. We want to give back to the teams. And they have things you can do that. You can buy, like, the in-game player icons.
Yeah, the emblems or whatever.
And some of that went to the team, but, like, this was, like, a very, like, put out in the open, like, for Dota. It's like, hey, look how much you're giving to the prize pool. Look how much these, like, the first place team is going to get, like, $2 million.
Yeah.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
But, like, I think other people want to see that now. They want to be able to contribute and be like, hey, we want to make further the scene, and this is a very good way to push it to the forefront.
Well,
What I've been sort of noticing since this has been reached, such heights, $6 million, is definitely, like, the Dota fans love it, but other esports fans totally are like, well, crap. Because the one that I definitely noticed this happening on was the Hearthstone tournament at BlizzCon. It's a $250,000 Hearthstone tournament. Blizzard's putting up the money, and everyone's like, well, thanks for putting up $250,000, Blizzard. That's like piss change. Why don't you give us $6 million? And it's like, well, it's not the same thing. Like, you guys should still be so happy that there's a $250,000 tournament.
The scale of those games is so different.
Yeah.
So the prize pools probably should be, at least for now, reflect that.
Yeah, Dota is the most played game on Steam.
Yeah.
Like
8 million people this month.
We don't know Hearthstone stats, but
No.
but it's not going to be anywhere as close to that.
I don't know. I don't think. Why would it be like, okay, this shatters esports prize pool records?
Yes.
Like last year, TI4 had 2.6, 2.8 million.
2.8.
Yes. Yeah,
Not quite 3 million.
Sure.
And now we're over double that, and it's going to keep going.
Yeah, I mean, last year's PGA Masters tournament was $8 million.
Yep. But like,
What?
why? I don't know why suddenly now that we've reached this new height, even though it's like insane.
Right, like this isn't a standard. This doesn't mean that every Counter-Strike tournament now has to be $8 million.
Yeah.
Right. People don't have Valve money and Valve fans. I mean, Riot. I think Riot can match that.
Also,
if
this
they
isn't
open it up to their
Valve's
fans.
fault or money. Like, this is
Right.
entirely the player base.
Yeah, this
If
is
Valve
not-
kicked in
Valve
a
kicked
few
in
million?
1.6.
1.6.
So, and the rest is from the community and the fans buying the compendium, or buying compendium points at least. So, I mean, you're totally right. It's the fans are doing this. It's just Valve allowed them to do so. And do you think, in that sense, that crowdfunded tournaments are the way of the future? Do you think that they're a good idea?
It certainly seems like it. I'd be very curious to see how, 5 years from now, is Kickstarter going to be a thing that people are still super into? Is crowdfunding going to be a thing that is still as much a big blooming bubble as it is now? And is Valve's, TI-8 going to have the same amount of enthusiasm behind it?
I agree on that point, but it's also a little scary. Like if people all of a sudden see this and like, okay, we're all going to start doing it. Okay, then
Right.
the money's
Will
gonna
it collapse?
Yeah, it's just gonna the money's just gonna disperse again.
Right.
rather
Everything's
than-
going to thin out.
And I feel like we need to again, like as like fledgling as esports is right now, kinda. It needs that big look at this.
Yeah.
Look how crazy this is.
Yeah, it's going to be. It'll be weird to see because most things don't have this scale.
Yeah.
I mean, this is like the biggest game on Steam. It's the biggest tournament in the world
Yeah.
for that game.
Riot's basically the only company that could compete with this.
Right. Most things are like tens of thousands of dollars.
Yeah, and that's a lot.
It is. Yeah, that's a lot.
I mean, I'm really interested to see what's going to happen, how Riot's going to respond to this. I mean, they're saying that their championships are going to be in Korea this year. Like, they're going to have really a huge, awesome tournament again at the end of this LCS season. So we'll just have to see, and we'll have to see, if Blizzard is going to retaliate at all as well. Who knows? Brian and I did a conversation about this on our IGN Arena YouTube channel. So if you want to check that out, a little bit more in depth, you can do that. It's youtube.com/IGN Arena. And you can also subscribe to the channel there as well. So now we are going to move on to our final topic of the day, and that is, can MOBAs succeed on consoles? Mitch, what do you think about this?
So, as it stands right now, the straight-up MOBAs that we've seen come to consoles have been kind of lacking. Awesome Knots was a really cool idea in that it took, the 5v5 format, different skills, different heroes, all that stuff, and made it kind of a 2D platformer-style action game. I still think the best instance of a MOBA we've seen on a console was Super Monday Night Combat. Super Monday Night Combat was the sequel on PC. Monday Night Combat was an XBLA shooter that was super MOBA influenced, but
not before MOBAs, but
before they were really on consoles.
Yeah.
Like, those dudes were way ahead of their time. Maybe too far, because I don't know if that game actually did really well.
They got a super version.
Right. And we've seen bits and pieces, but it's not like the console MOBA is a prevalent thing. Guardians of Middle-earth was lacking in a lot of ways. It was a little simple. It had a really cool theme, right? Like, Lord of the Rings has this amazing cast, but
And it controlled interestingly. I don't know if it was great, but
not great is the word I would
But it was
use.
in the right direction.
Well,
It was
that's the
good
big
in the
problem,
sense
right?
that, one of the things that I liked about it was that, in MOBAs you generally have 4 abilities, and so on a controller you have 4 buttons that you could press, and that sort of tied in well with one another. But yeah, it wasn't like, it didn't fit exactly or play exactly how I wanted it to, I guess. And what were you going to say?
The problem is that in MOBAs, most of the time you're moving a cursor around and clicking on things, and that doesn't feel good with a joystick.
Right.
So
the form and function of actually playing a MOBA on PC just doesn't really translate that well to a controller.
Right. Especially in League, where you have so many skill shots where you need to point in a specific direction. In Dota, a lot of times you can point target and it'll hit the person if you're close enough.
Right.
And maybe that could work on a controller.
But you could make those gestures so much faster, right? Like, if you're going to fire Murano's arrow, you're going to be able to hit that button and move your mouse and click in the exact spot you want much more efficiently than you are positioning it and pointing an arrow on a joystick.
And that precision, when you think about that skill, it's like a straight line arrow, and if it hits them, it stuns them based on how far it is. That's really difficult to do.
Yeah.
But people do it on a keyboard and mouse, but I just can't imagine doing that.
No.
Yeah.
Trying to set up something like that with a
I'm not
controller.
sure.
I feel like it would have to be on a smaller scale, like Awesome Knots, like Guardians of Middle-earth. It's tiny. It's like you can't have large spaces like the jungle where it's just you have places where you can blink into the trees. Like, that can't happen.
One MOBA that I really liked recently that wasn't on console was Solstice Arena, which came out for mobile, and it's on
really
Steam
cool.
now too. And I really liked that, but they totally did everything that you're saying. It was a very small map. There was no jungle. It was basically
It's like
your
one lane,
base is
basically.
here, the other base is here, and you have one lane, and that was it. And there was a chest in the middle that you could go after, so there was an extra objective. And there were environmental effects, like if you ran through the water, you would go a little bit slower. But that worked really well for me, at least on mobile. And I think that's definitely the right track. It needs to be sort of smaller and not, these wide open maps with jungles and RTS elements and all this other stuff that, things are happening.
It's not a direct translation, and I think what you're going to start seeing, especially this year and next year on consoles, is like Arena of Fate, the Crytek thing that got announced.
Yeah, they just got announced.
Like, from all signs, based on that dumb teaser trailer, that game looks a lot like it might be a very traditional MOBA, but with these very famous heroes like Red Riding Hood and Robin Hood and the Wolf and
Frankenstein.
Nikola Tesla. And like, that might work on console, but I think the prevalence of MOBAs on console is going to be seen a lot more in stuff like Evolve, and I still maintain that Star Wars Battlefront, the DICE game, will be a MOBA.
Yeah, it's sort of. Keep going.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
In that, Evolve it's not directly a MOBA, right? Like, it's a 4v1 shooter where it's like someone plays a monster, 4 people try to hunt it down, and it's not a MOBA because there's no towers or anything, but it's very, very influenced by MOBAs in its hero design, because there's this massive roster of heroes who are very different, who have different relationships with each other based on the weapons and skills they have, which directly tie to who they are. So you're not just like, well, I guess I'll take a sniper rifle this time. It's, no, I'm playing this hero who has these set of skills. And I still maintain that a lot of shooters are going to start bringing these elements into their game, and Battlefront seems prime for that.
What was actually funny is another game that came out last week, Transistor. If you really want, like,
oh my God,
to understand
seriously,
how to play a MOBA and understand, like, a single-player MOBA experience.
It's like a stop-motion team fight, that game.
Yeah, and it's you have 4 skills, and they all have these, like, you can make sub-abilities, but it's crazily influenced by Dota.
Big time.
I highly recommend it if you want something that you're like, I don't want to get into the crazy competitive, but I kind of want to see how skills and, like, positioning is super important in that game as well.
Or if you play a lot of MOBAs and you just want something different, but similar enough to be comfortable, like, absolutely play Transistor.
Yes.
Also, just play Transistor. It's really awesome.
Because Greg Kasabian over there is a huge Dota fan, and he's been on like Dota Today, and it's just great that you can see that influence coming to his game, and he's doing something different with it.
You can tweet him at Kasabian on Twitter. Tell him to come on our show. Yeah.
Ooh.
We would love to have you.
Yeah, but I honestly think where people are looking for, like, the next Call of Duty leveling system, like taking the RPG elements and putting it into shooter, it's going to be the MOBA element. It's going to be the lane game.
Yeah, it's sort of like what makes a MOBA. Like, because you think traditional MOBA, 3 lanes, towers, like leveling up a character from nothing to max whatever each time. But like, as you were saying, Evolve, it's just sort of, it's not like there's not lanes, it's not, but it's just going to take those barest elements of like progression that lasts for 1 round only.
Yeah. I really think that, like, Dota is a game designer's game. It's something that I think designers are going to be playing a lot more of in the very near future, if they're not already. And it's just such like a weird, complicated example of how design should and shouldn't be done, because it's like very non-traditional, it's very risky. Dota takes a lot of weird chances, and League too. And as more developers play these games, they're going to start thinking very differently about how they make them, because it's, it's not like they're going to copy and paste, but there are core tenets of this entire genre, and as it evolves, those are changing as well, that are going to start making their way into other games.
Yeah, there are things about Dota that probably shouldn't work on paper. Like the idea of like stacking creeps.
Right.
Like that's so weird. And like
you're breaking the game at a lot of times, and it's like that's a beneficial way to play.
This match maybe will last an hour, and maybe you'll have a bad start, and the whole hour you'll get rolled, and you won't have any fun. Like what if you pitch that? Like
no one. If you came up to me and were like, Leah, I have the best idea for a game. Let me tell you about this, and then you said that to me, I'd be like,
oh, cool, I'll never play that.
Cool, Brian, that was a good idea. And then just like, no.
One of the things I found out this week is, I think they've taken it out at this point, but Pudge couldn't use a blink dagger.
Right.
For since like original Dota, right? And
Interesting.
That was crazy. I did not know that, and I was like, I guess it makes sense because he's damaging himself, but it also just he couldn't use it because it crashed the game originally.
Yeah. And then they find that's not even a recent, or that's a very recent update.
Yeah,
it was like
I think
6.79 or 6.8 or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know there's a few things like Faceless Void and Spirit Breaker can't use Skull Basher because they already have a bash, so they can't stack it. It's weird.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. I think that eventually MOBAs will make their way to consoles and work.
It's
but
inevitable.
I think,
they're too big.
I mean, Crytek, like we were saying, Arena of Fate is coming to consoles. They've said that it's PC and console games, so we'll have to see, how that one plays out at E3. But I think that that you guys are on the right track. That it's more going to be MOBA elements than actual hardcore MOBAs that we see.
Oh, the last one I can think of is the next Respawn game, Titanfall 2 or whatever. Like, we already saw a little bit of, like, the AI
Totally forgot about that.
Yeah.
The game's also super influenced by MOBAs.
Yeah, where it's like you level up kind of by, like, killing the creeps.
The grunts that are running around.
And then you get your Titan, and that's kind of your level up. I think they're probably going to take that to, like, the nth level.
It's hard to not, want to incorporate some of these elements when this genre is becoming so huge. Yeah. Already there are 14 upcoming MOBAs that I have been looking into recently. Yeah, I mean,
Dawngaten, Infinite Crisis, and the Adventure Time MOBA. Like,
there are so many. So it's just
from big publishers too.
Yeah, totally. It makes sense.
I mean, how can you look at League's numbers and Dota's numbers and not
want a piece
some of that? Right.
Exactly. But if you want to check out, the Arena of Fate trailer or any of the other MOBAs that we've been talking about on the show today, you can check out all their trailers and more information about them at youtube.com/ign-arena. And I think that'll do it for episode 2.
Indeed.
Yeah,
Indeed.
Not bad, y'all.
Yay. If you guys want to write into us, send us some feedback, have any questions for us, you can do so by sending us an email to arena-podcast@ign.com. And make sure that you subscribe because we love you.
We love you so much. Can we go play Dota? Yeah, all right.
All right. Let's go.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.